Welcome back. You're watching Sokoni here on Morning Prime. We continue pace with the conversation. Try and retrieve that so that you can see it. I think it's eluding me. Then momentarily we buckle down to discuss the issue regarding where we are today with Sri Lanka just being an example of what is happening currently, where we had people storming to the president's residential house because the bites of the cost of living is really, really hitting them. So this is what is on the front page of the Standard, and I want just to get that particular story there on top. It's on page 35, where Sri Lanka president now flees. Another fuel crisis looms, and this is on page 22 of the business business segment of the Standard this morning. So the question that I wanted to put on the table, Bilokero, is we've seen the crude oil price plummeting right now. It is actually at 100, it is going down. Will that also reflect, or is it too soon to say that it can reflect on the pump stations as it is? Because I think that particular announcement, we had it 2 weeks ago.
There's a time lag. There's a time. There's a time lag between the international crude prices and the pump price reviews by Kenya. About 2 months. I think you would see probably the impact of the $100 now. You would probably see it in the earliest, probably in end August or September. In fact, September. You'd probably see it in August, I think September. That's the earliest you'll see. So already the ministry has given indications that this week it will probably go up by 10 shillings. It's on your papers. But the risk, the biggest concern for the country is if the government lifts the subsidy. So then that would really, make the prices go crazy and affect the entire economy adversely. So, but I hope they will somehow find ways of.
But what is the conversation? The last time I think we had that conversation, the subsidy, and we saw the president also with the supplementary budget. There was an allowance for the subsidy.
Yeah, but Treasury had come out clearly that they cannot sustain it and they are going to remove it. But I think it would be ill-advised if the government removes that. It would make the situation worse in the country, in the economy. Every sector of the economy would suffer, and the cost of living would get much worse than it is now. And I think we'll risk sliding into where Sri Lanka is. I think the government needs to simply shelve some of its development or other priorities and try and keep be focused on the cost of living, which is the most important thing for the people.
Collins, I think while we all agree that in the long term the fuel subsidies are unsustainable, in the short term the reason why they were given cannot be more legitimate now. If you look at the infrastructure survey, 64% of Kenyans are complaining about the high cost of living. It behoves government to keep the subsidy. That's number one. But number two, which is more important, and I think we're discussing this during the break, whoever it is that takes over government on the 10th of August has his work cut out for him, because the economy is in shambles and the challenges that require to be addressed out of this economy will have to move away from the political blame game to the serious problem, because this challenge is a global challenge. The Sri Lanka example is a fairly clear, and that person must look at Sri Lanka, because if they don't, Kenyans will complain the same way Sri Lanka are complaining, and we don't want to reach there. But that requires very deliberate and very focused decisions from the 10th of August, once that person knows that they're the next president. And the biting call. We had the pictures from Sri Lanka, how the people were coming out in force, and they were going to the presidential palace, as it were. If my director may just play that, because as you mentioned, the next government has its work really cut out, because this will be the spectre, maybe the kind of experience where Kenyans are really pushed to the corner. How will they react? Already we can see some of activists howling some of its protests on the ground, as it were. And we've seen the president of Sri Lanka has flown the country because he couldn't really bear what is really happening. So this is how they were storming the palace, or the residents. After they're really tired, you can see them knocking back some of
some feelings inside there in the palace. They are pushed to the corner.
Yeah, Dibal, as far as the prices of oil is concerned for tomorrow, I don't see it happening, and it would be unwise for that to happen tomorrow.
You don't see the price?
It'll be unwise it will be unwise this time.
To be unwise.
It'll be unwise for raising the fuel prices at this time.
The ballot is around the corner.
And the ballot is around the corner.
It's all about the ballot.
It will be very unwise. Strategically, it will be very unwise to do that, because when you raise the price of fuel, everything else goes up. And what you're seeing in Sri Lanka is the genesis of that is the fuel crisis and all this stuff, which is a global problem. Like we were saying during the break, the fact that we have two gentlemen who are looking to become president, this is a transitional year, and being a transitional year, it becomes very tricky for them, because the things that we are pointing out now, it should be the other person pointing that out. The other person pointing other, but both of them are going into this and inheriting a very dangerous world as we live in today in terms of economics and the food prices, the food issues, a lot of things that are happening, the debt and employment. There are a lot of economic issues to deal with as they move to for the next government. So they have a lot of work to do. And they have their work cut out for them. But I think raising the prices again of fuel, personally, I think it will be unwise.
Bilokero.
Yeah.
So you think because of political expediency, we might get some relief?
Oh yes. There are a lot of things that are now being kept.
Or they'll scale down a bit.
Yes,
they'll scale down by 5 shillings, 2 shillings.
Anything that affects, the election. Because government is clearly taking sides, and they know, so they don't want to take a risk. And so I'm sure they will increase it, the fuel prices, and that they have no choice, but not significantly. I think they still have to put a lot of it under the subsidy, and hopefully the next government will find money to pay them, because they're already in arrears substantially to the traders.
Mm-hmm. And the issue of Sri Lanka, I wanted you also to comment on that.
No, you see the advantage. Sri Lanka is a very democratic country like Kenya.
Yes, it is.
And it was economically doing very well like Kenya. It's a very strong country.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's management of the country. The same way that the economy, this country, has been screwed up. It's the same thing that happened in that country. And the strange thing we have here is, you go around the country, you see billboards saying how the government has fulfilled its promises in every thing, and then the same day you see again that the government is saying, yeah, there are problems with our country. So the only challenge the thing I fear is this: the level of poverty is much higher in Kenya than in Sri Lanka. You can't compare. I mean, just look at Nairobi alone. Nearly half of the population live in the slums around the city, and so already 46% of the country is living below poverty. So the level of poverty is higher, and the risks, if anything happens, or if the situation deteriorates, it can spiral out of control much faster in Kenya than in fact in other. The only difference is in Sri Lanka. In those countries, security forces don't use lethal weapons to kill the demonstrators. In Kenya, if anything happens, try marching. Forget about State House. Try marching even in the streets of Nairobi, you get in trouble. If you don't get a live bullet, you're lucky. So I think we may not have anything seriously happening now, because everyone is excited about the election. But I think those who come in, I agree with Prof that in the next few months, whoever comes in will have, if the situation globally does not change, I'm telling you, the situation is going to be bad.
And the situation also for the euro, because I can see the euro has really tumbled below $1 for the first time in history, in 2 decades. Put it on course for one of the worst years in its history, especially if the energy price shock triggered by the Ukraine conflict tips the bloc into a prolonged economic crisis, even for the euro dollar.
And it'll get worse. Right now it's summer in the part of the Western world. When it comes to winter,
where now the gas that needs to be piped, that they get piped from Russia.
Energy demand increases.
And the demand increases for. Then you see a few more bubbles start to burst in Europe. So Europe has not seen the worst yet until the winter hits, and when those fuel demand goes up. And Russia now turns off the fuel, because I think they're capable of doing that. They turn off the natural gas from heating homes in Germany and all those other European countries that import natural gas for heating homes. Then you start seriously to see a lot of serious issues. So you have a natural gas issue, you have a fuel crisis. It becomes a real crisis for Europe when it comes now to winter. Towards the fourth quarter and the first quarter of next year will be very tough for Europe. Yeah.
All right.
I think the point that the colleagues are making is going to be tough for everybody. For me, I think the bottom line is the sooner we recognize that the problem we are facing economically is actually a global problem and a problem that requires innovative leadership and not just sound bites, the easier it will be for the next government to deal with the problems. If they don't, and if they get into it thinking, oh, this is something easy, something we can fix in a few months, they'll be in for a rude shock.
So the impact of the sanction as well, if you look at the Business Daily, it says 13 billion shillings Russia exports to Kenya.
But Debali, remember we discussed this sometimes when we were here, it was just starting. There was a conversation about will this affect us or not, and there was one of the panelists who said, no, this is an indication that actually we live in a global village. So the Russian war, the Ukraine war, as the longer it continues, the more it affects Kenya directly, and this is the example.
Yeah.
There's a whole question of the African Union meeting with the President Putin regarding also, food, the grain, and everyone. I think the entire world was also really castigating Africa and why we're really taking sides. We had Zelensky really also, taking issues with that at the end of the day. But people are saying, when it comes to food, you cannot negotiate, where it's really coming from. But at the end of the day, you need food. If you are a hungry person, it doesn't matter where your food will come from, even when you steal. Well, just talking people, what they're really saying at the end of the day. So the sanctions here are tightening the noose on everyone.
But we're also missing an opportunity. We're also missing an opportunity as a country. If you look at issues of wheat and the issues of wheat and fertilizer, let alone steel, because but between wheat and fertilizer, and those are the commodities that we have to import from other countries. We are missing the opportunity now to develop our own local wheat production capacity in ways that we don't really have to depend on all these imports. We have vast pieces of land in this country that can still be utilized. It's about time that the government comes up. And I like what Peter Munya said sometime last year, that they are open and willing to lease public land for private development for large-scale farming. I think it's time we start looking at the issue of national food security as part of one of the important pillars of national security, and start looking at how we really start to become self-sufficient in some of these grains that we are importing from other countries, because we should not. Which goes back to the issue of Garana Gulalu, the death of Garana Gulalu, and what the promise that had in order for us to get rid of ourselves of the need to import all these grains we are importing from everywhere else, because we can grow them in this country.
Bill, we had the African business also headlining how Africa is missing an opportunity, especially when it comes to LNPG, because we know that is becoming also a very critical commodity that is missing. And when you look at the Russian war and what is happening to Germany and other jurisdictions as well. We have our neighboring Tanzania. I don't know how LNPG is working here in this country. We have Mozambique. I think Mozambique also has a very advanced industrialized LNPG sector as well. How then do we exponentially, take advantage in rising our numbers of exports with this vacuum that has been created with the crisis?
The challenge has been like the financial capacity by countries in Africa to develop its natural resources, the gas, the oil, all. We've seen even Kenya, we've been struggling the last 10 years. But the few countries that already have, and what is happening from the last couple of months is that Western countries are very keen in developing the gas, particular, and even oil in Africa. This is something they've started focusing. The objective is not really because they have suddenly found that Africa needs these things, but it's because of the demand now after this war, the demand in Europe. Already they are signing off the gas in Algeria and other countries up the north for European, for European markets, and so now there's a rush, if you will, let me use that word, by Western countries and companies to try and develop all these fields which have potential for gas and oil in Africa. And I think it's opportunities. This is an opportunity for Africa. Suddenly they become useful, not just on oil and gas, by the way, and even opportunity for farming. Many countries, I've seen countries in the Gulf, but even other countries have now find Africa has also got huge opportunity for farming that can, with all the challenges on food globally. So I think it's an opportunity that we can take advantage of in many of the countries in Africa. Unfortunately, there are challenges in many of these countries, challenges in not just logistical infrastructure and so forth, but I think they also have challenges in terms of security, in terms of politics, in terms of corruption, and there are many other factors that sometimes hinder private businesses from investing billions. For example, the issue we just discussed of trying to get land in this place and for farming, I mean, they've tried. I know there are a number of time countries in Gulf tried to get some pieces of land here for farming. The challenges in countries where integrity is an issue, also trying to get those kind of decisions is a problem. But I agree, the opportunities, especially for the gas, because of the demand in Europe, I think Africa should take advantage now to exploit it so that tomorrow, then they can benefit their own citizens.
Yeah, even as we're winding up on that, LNG and LPG, we had Kenya committing to fully, transiting households to clean energy in the next 6 years, they had said, which is facing now a litmus test because of the soaring prices, taxes, cartels, and lack of adequate storage of facilities and corruption stifling the uptake and consumption of LPG. President Uhuru Kenyatta, I think last year, told the international community at the UN Climate Change Conference in Glasgow that his administration is committed to achieving 100% access to clean cooking energy by 2028. However, latest available data shows that 80% of Kenyans still use biomass for cooking, with a per capita consumption of LPG at 7.5 kg against a target of 15 kg. Kenya had hoped to enhance LPG penetration from approximately 10% to 70% between 2017 and 2019, and to have 10 million households using clean cooking solutions by 2022. Subsidy program, however, never really worked out. The plans were thrown into disarray by the collapse of its 3 billion shillings Mwananchi gas project. Remember the Mwananchi gas project? And where they were saying we can have all this reticulated LPG in our houses. Issues of corruption also came to bear with that as well. Could we just comment on that briefly in light of energy crisis that we have, briefly, as we're running up?
The energy crisis demonstrates to us the need for us to be able to implement whatever it is that we commit to. I think in addition to what the president said last year, just last week, I think at the University of Nairobi, he was made the global climate adaptation champion for the entire world. The transition to net zero, a carbon neutral world is a critical issue for every government, and I think energy plays an important role in that aspect. So the commitment that the country has had about moving to clean energy is one that we cannot continue paying lip service to. Unfortunately, a lot of the times we make commitments, then when push comes to shove, our governance challenges stands in the way, issues around corruption. So if you talk about the Mwananchi gas project, for example, if you talk about the need for us to move, there are vested interests of people who want to continue with the dirty source of fuel. I think the other time we were discussing even the Lamu or coal power. Yes. We have agreed to transit to clean energy, but we are at the same time promoting coal power, a contradiction in terms. I think the need for us to be able to take seriously making it possible for ordinary households to be able to access clean energy in a manner that is that is affordable is a critical issue that I think must be taken seriously by the next government.
Prof.
Yeah, I think the issue of energy, we have talked about this at length, but the issue of clean energy becomes, first of all, it's very expensive to set up some of these clean energy initiatives. Pronouncements are different from the realities. When you start now actualizing what we say we are going to do, there are costs involved, there are cartels involved in the same. There's all these things that have to do with how our economy and our politicals are structured, such that the things that we say we are going to do, we have to be able to follow that up and actually do the actual things that we say we are going to do. When it comes to like calling a coal, when we are going back to coal, America and the others developed on coal, but now 100 years after they have finished all whatever they come and tell us now you need to do clean energy and all that stuff, but there's no money to have all those clean technologies. If you go to Amazon today, or if you, let's say you go to Nyandarua, those highlands where they have trees and all that, and you tell that mama to stop cutting that tree for charcoal and all that stuff, they will not listen to you. So part of the things we need to do is to make sure we uplift the livelihoods of our people. Then from there, after they've had enough food to eat, then from there we tell them now the energy that you use is a little bit dirty, but we're going to bring some to you, but it will be a little bit more expensive. I think for me, the first thing we need to start looking at is really food security before you even tackle any of those other things.
Right.
In my view, the transition to LPG is doable if the government can prioritize it. You see, when you prioritize policy, then you fund it. And the way to fund this thing is, for example, you've seen the huge taxes on LPG gas. And so I think, in my view, for example, I'll give you an example. When SGO was being developed, the entire cost of the input, all the materials, raw materials imported from China were imported duty-free. So when the government wants you to encourage a private investor to get into really the LPG business, and you can, but the government can provide incentives, can reduce the taxes, can eliminate some of the taxes, and that way enhance the uptake of this thing across the country substantially. They can do that, and I think so. It's critical in my view. It's something that they can do if they prioritize, and I think we should be looking at that. That's the way to go.
And by the way, I think the government had made the pronouncement on the VAT on the cooking gas. It should be reduced to 8%.
Yeah.
But now that is not coming. It's not reflecting.
Yeah, not only that, but you see, if you can allow the entire waiver of duty and VAT on raw materials and equipment and plant and everything used for SGR and all these highways in China, you can do that also for people who want to invest in gas and so forth and all these things. And I'm sure when you do that, I'm telling you, you'll find investors coming.
Fantastic. All right, Professor Collins Orote, thank you. Your headline thoughts, just briefly, bro. Your headline thoughts as well.
26 days to an election. I think my urge is for all of us to continue being peaceful and to ensure that we exercise our democratic rights. For the people who are still undecided, the economic situation of this country and the future of this country is such that you cannot remain undecided.
Is it 25 or 26?
25.
25 days.
Yeah, I'm saying that yesterday. You left me at 1.
Oh, you left at 1. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, same thing. The big thing now is election, and we are hoping for a peaceful election, that we don't have to have any of the bad things we've had after the elections in the prior cycle. So we are hoping we have a peaceful election, and by the 10th of August, we should know which government will be leading us.
All right, fantastic. Bill Okiro, your headline thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I will just echo the same thing, except Kenyans need to tighten their belts, because as we go towards the election or even after, the situation in the economy is likely to get more depressing. Yeah, and I think so Kenyans just have to be patient and see what the new regime or government will come up with within the 90 days. I haven't seen a 90 days on the economy, but hopefully.
So they don't expect a messiah. Within 100 days, things will have turned around. Yeah, globally, that's the reality. But I want to thank you for that very massive, cogent discussion we've had this morning. And that's the reality on the ground. Of course, even the Federal Administrative Agency has warned, actually, that next year, the U.S. should also brace for a severe recession that has never happened in that country for quite a while. And so that has a bearing to all of us as well. Where it's time to just tighten our belt, or pare down on our expenses. They call it shrinkflation, right? Kadogo economy. That's where we're headed to. Thank you very much for your valid company. Don't go away. Much more on the other side of the break with Spice FM.